picture of them was taken. So here, if I click on this, we can see, so this shows an electron microscope image of a set of chromosomes. And you see there are various sizes. Some of them, the X is connected, the centromere it's called, up high. Others it's sort of in the middle. Others, it depends on the chromosome. They're all unique though, but each of these chromosomes has a partner somewhere in this picture. And when you find the partner, one of those came from the mother and one came from the father. So we know that that's how chromosomes are made. Okay. So they're important because they have the instructions to build our cells, to build our whole bodies in one single cell. And that one nucleus has all the instructions to build an entire living organism in just a single nucleus. And these chromosomes are what get passed on from parents to their offspring. Like we said, 23 of your chromosomes came from your mother and 23 from your father. Brandon?
We already did this.
Yeah. Chromosome number varies with species, but the number doesn't really mean anything. All right. Now, one thing that's often done is doctors can take a picture of the chromosomes in a cell and create what's called a karyotype. And the karyotype, they take a picture of the chromosomes and then they arrange them according to size and put them with their partners. So here you have a picture of the chromosomes. Now scientists used to do this, like actually taking a picture, cutting out the chromosomes, lining them up, pasting them on paper. They no longer do that. Now they use computers to do it. But when you're done, this map of a person's chromosomes looks something like this. Now in this case, the chromosomes aren't X's, they're in the single form, but they're still chromosomes. And so here you have a picture of the number of chromosomes in a person. You can see them. They start with the longest set, go down to the shortest. Some of them are bent, and that's okay. They're also stained, and that's why they have this sort of striping pattern. And what you'll notice is the striping pattern is the same on the two partners. Okay. So these are 46 total chromosomes. That's the entire chromosome of one individual person. And 23 came from each parent. Now, you could see that they often number the chromosomes, starting at 1 for the longest and then going to the shortest. But there's one set here that are not numbered.
23.
Yeah, the last set, the 23rd set, are not numbered because these are a special pair of chromosomes. These are called the sex chromosomes. And there's two possible sex chromosomes a person could be born with. An X chromosome, X chromosomes, and Y chromosomes. Now, males have which two sex chromosomes? Thomas? Yeah, an X and a Y results in a male. What about a female, Sophia?
XX.
Yeah, two X chromosomes results in a female. Now, if you think carefully about how reproduction happens and meiosis, which parent is responsible really for determining the gender of the offspring? Natalie?
The male.
Why did you say that?
Because females only have XX.
Yes, because the male determines the gender of the offspring, and that should make sense. Next slide. Because if we have cells, so this will be a cell from what?
Female.
A female. This is a cell from a male. We know from our last unit, in meiosis, chromosomes get separated. But what sex chromosome can a female give to her egg cells?
X.
Only an X. Every egg cell has an X chromosome in it. But when a male cell goes through meiosis to produce sperm cells, what can the sperm cells get? Either an X or a Y. Half of sperm cells have X chromosomes, half of sperm cells have Y chromosomes. Okay? And so which sperm cell fertilizes the egg cell is going to determine what the gender of the offspring is. So let's say this sperm cell happens to fertilize an egg. What is the result? What is it?
Female.
Female. Or if it fertilizes this egg cell, again, 2 X chromosomes, that's a female. But if it's a Y chromosome sperm cell that fertilizes the egg, we end up with males. So it's the male that determines the gender. And actually, if a couple is going to have in vitro fertilization, where they fertilize the egg outside of the body, they take a sperm cell, fertilize the egg outside, then implant it in the woman's uterus. Sometimes they do that if people are having trouble conceiving children. When they do that, scientists can actually separate X sperm from Y sperm, and they can choose which type of sperm they use to fertilize the egg. And therefore, what does that mean?
They can choose either one of
Yeah, they can choose what gender that embryo is. Now these karyotypes are sometimes made when a woman is pregnant if they want to determine the gender and determine if all the chromosomes are present in the fetus. They can do what's called an amniocentesis. In amniocentesis, the doctor uses a long needle to extract a little bit of amniotic fluid, and then they can create a karyotype, a map of the chromosomes that fetus has, because there's some cells from the fetus floating around in this amniotic fluid. Okay? When they do that, they can diagnose certain chromosome disorders. For example, here's a karyotype. Again, you see the chromosomes all aligned there by a pair. Does anybody see anything abnormal in this karyotype? Chloe?
Number 21 has 3.
Yeah, number 21 here, what you see is there's 3 of those chromosomes, 3 21st chromosomes. And sometimes a sperm cell or an egg cell during meiosis happens to end up with an extra chromosome. If that cell is fertilized, then you end up with a person with 47 chromosomes, 1 extra chromosome on the 21st chromosome.
Why is it always the 21st?
Because having an extra chromosome results in a variety of physical and cognitive disorders that we call that class of things Down syndrome. And it's always the 21st results in certain things happening. Changes to facial structure, changes to the digestive system, developmental delays. And these are all, having the proper number of chromosomes is important. And having an extra results in some problems. And that's what we call Down syndrome. There are other chromosome disorders as well, though. Down syndrome is by far the most common, and it becomes more common as parents get older. Older parents are more likely to have children with Down syndrome. If you look at the graph, it goes up as a woman's age goes up, the chance of having a child with Down syndrome goes up. But there are other ones. There's trisomy 13 is when a child is born with an extra 13th chromosome. Klinefelter syndrome or Turner syndrome or other chromosome abnormalities, but they're much rarer. Down syndrome is much more common. And here again, you see another example. You see that 21st chromosome, and there's an extra copy. Now sometimes people always ask, well, what if somebody's born with 3 extra chromosomes? Generally, if it's more than 1, the embryo doesn't grow properly. It never implants and never grows into an embryo and fetus. Having 1 extra chromosome, sometimes the embryo can survive that and make it and become a fetus and be born. But if it's much more than 1, if it's 2 or 3 or 4, then generally it doesn't grow and develop. Right?
How come some of the chromosomes are thick?
It's just sort of the way, sometimes they're bent and stuff. It's just sort of, there's some variation there, but it doesn't mean there's any problem with them. Peter?
If the doctor found out that there's an extra 21st chromosome during the test, is it possible to remove the chromosome?
To remove the chromosome? No, because by the time they actually do the test, it's a whole embryo or fetus. You can't remove it from every cell. No, so no, you can't. But you could possibly, I'm not exactly sure, but if they're doing in vitro fertilization, they may be able to check the embryo before they implant it in the woman's uterus to be sure that it has a proper number of chromosomes. Okay, if we look at a couple other karyotypes, a karyotype basically just shows all of a person's chromosomes. So if you look here, please raise your hand. Is this a karyotype of a male or a female?
Which one?
This one on top.
Okay.
Raise your hand.
Yeah.
Kimberly? Why do you say that? Yeah, 23, they're both the same. It's not labeled as two X's, but they are. Those are two X chromosomes. That's a female. And this one down here, raise your hand. What about this one? Male or female, Caitlin?
Male.
Yeah, this is a male, and again, you see that there's two different chromosomes there. The Y chromosome is very small. It contains very little actual genetic information. But there's also a genetic abnormality, a chromosome abnormality in this person. What is it, Thomas?
Down syndrome.
Down syndrome, and we know why?
There's a third 21st.
Yeah, because of that extra 21st chromosome. Kimberly?
When it's like that, does the doctor find out what it has?
Like whether the fetus has Down syndrome or not?
Yeah.
They can, and if they do an amniocentesis, they can tell you for sure if it's a boy or a girl, because obviously they're seeing the X and Y chromosome. They can tell for sure. You know, when they do an ultrasound, if they don't see things or if the baby's not in the proper position, sometimes they can't tell. But when they do an amniocentesis, they always can tell for sure. All right, so now we really get into genetics here. So genetics is the study of heredity. What does that word mean? If you say like something is hereditary, I mean,
Traits biologically passed on by your
yeah,
parents.
traits that are passed on from parents. So studying genetics is studying the passing on of genetic information from parents to offspring. And we're going to spend most of our unit talking about what we call Mendelian genetics. And this is genetics, and it's named after this guy here. This is Gregor Mendel. He lived in the 19th century. He was an Austrian monk. Austria is different from Australia, just FYI. He was an Austrian monk, a religious person. He lived in a monastery. But besides his religious duties, he was also a scientist. He was a botanist. He liked growing plants. And he was very, very meticulous in collecting data from growing his pea plants. He did his work with pea plants. And the data he collected allowed him to come to some conclusions about how traits are inherited that we still use today, okay, 160 years later. So he's known as the father of genetics. Gregor Mendel. And he did his work with pea plants, where he would breed pea plants together or cross them and see what the results were, see what their offspring grew to be like. He kept very, very careful records about the height of the plant, the color of the flowers, color of the peas, texture of the peas. He kept track of all of these various traits and kept very, very good data. And eventually looked at his data and came up with some conclusions. Really? I'm going to tell you that in the next slide. And so the conclusions that Mendel came up with is that these traits he saw in pea plants, how tall they were, the color of the flower, the texture of the pea, they were controlled by two factors. Now today we would call these factors genes. They're controlled by two genes. in these two genes, or two factors, one of them comes from the parent mother, one from the father. Each parent contributes one gene to the offspring. Because each sex cell, each gamete, contains one chromosome from each pair. So he was working with pea plants. So what are we talking about, gametes or sex cells in pea plants? Do plants reproduce sexually? Yes. Yeah. Plants reproduce sexually, most plants. They can also reproduce asexually. And plants have reproductive cells. Plants have ovaries. Okay? Plants have gametes. And so if we look at a flower, I'm sorry to break this news to you, but if somebody presents you with a bouquet of flowers, they're giving you a bundle of reproductive organs from a plant. That's what flowers are, they're reproductive organs. Yes.
So when you smell flowers.
Yes. So plants, flowering plants, some flowers are male flowers, some are female flowers. Some plants have both reproductive organs in a single flower. If you think about like a tulip, if you ever see, maybe right now you have tulips growing in your yard. If you look carefully, sort of coming from inside of the flower are these little stalks. On the end is a little sort of oval pod that's kind of all, the texture is like all rough and powdery. Those are the male reproductive organs of that flower. Okay? Yeah, and so they're called the anthers. Those little ovals are the anthers, and they produce pollen. Pollen is basically plant sperm. Pollen is the male reproductive cell of a plant. So if, like, you're allergic to pollen, or, in the spring the trees they release the pollen and it covers cars and your driveway's all yellowish green, that's pollen. That is basically a sperm cell from male plants. Each of those tiny little pollen grains has half the chromosomes that its parent plant did. But also in flowers are female reproductive organs. Okay, it's called the ovary, this area. The end is the stigma. And inside of the ovary are tiny little egg cells, ovules. Okay, so those are the female organs. What happens is pollen from male plants often blows through the air. When a pollen grain lands on this stigma, it starts to grow. And it grows a little tube that goes into the ovary and fertilizes a little egg cell. That little fertilized egg cell eventually grows into what? A seed. A seed is an embryo of a plant. Okay? And often in many plants, after it's fertilized, what does the rest of the ovary grow into?
The lion.
Shell.
No. Where do you find seeds?
On the ground. Inside the fruit.
The ovary grows into a fruit. So when you bite into an apple, you're biting into the ripened ovaries of a female plant, which inside contains little tiny embryos of that plant, which are the seeds. That's how plants reproduce. So what Mendel would do, these are what the flowers of pea plants look like. He'd take a tiny little paintbrush, and let's say he'd put it on the anther and he'd get some pollen on his paintbrush. Then he'd go to another pea plant and he'd put that pollen on the stigma of another and fertilize it. Basically, he's artificially inseminating these plants so that he can control. It's not just pollen randomly blowing. He actually would take pollen from one, fertilize another plant, and grow the seeds and write down and record what the offspring look like. Wow, these are all questions about plant reproduction. Ryan?
Could possibly be a tree crossed with like a small.
No, because pollen from one plant only will fertilize pollen from the same plant. Just like if you took a sperm cell from a dog, combine it with an egg cell from a cat, you're not going to get a dog cat. No.
That's a good show.
Caitlin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, shh. What's that? Yeah, I mean, some fruits are bred to be like a seedless watermelon. They're bred through artificial selection so that the seeds, they take watermelons with very small seeds, breed them together, and then their offspring have very small seeds until they got to the point where there are no seeds. But how do they grow those watermelons? They can't grow them from seeds, right?
By the one.
So they have to do asexual reproduction to grow new plants with those seeds. All right, yeah, Linda. Paintbrush. Kimberly. Grass does flower and reproduce, yeah, that's pollen. Jimmy?
Does that mean that flowers and plants can have abnormalities too? Like
Yeah, sometimes. Yep.
Flowers are like Down syndrome.
They can have chromosome abnormalities. Thomas?
Don't people make like different trees that have genetic?
Sometimes you could hybridize closely related species. Habib?
So I basically got my mom reproducing.
Yes. Yes, here, I gave you a bundle of female reproductors, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. All right. So when Mendel did this and recorded his data, he came up with a bunch of information, a bunch of conclusions that we still use today. So first of all, let's just review. In humans, for example, a sperm cell is 23 chromosomes, an egg cell is 23. They combine to form an embryo with 46 chromosomes. Right? I don't exactly know what the number is in pea plants, but the same is true. Let's say a pea plant has 20 chromosomes, 10 are in the sperm cell, 10 in the egg cell. Once they combine, we're back to our proper number. And so these sperm and egg cells, these reproductive cells, they have inside of them the chromosomes. These chromosomes have genes on them. Information about how to build that organism. You know, when Mendel, he did his work before we knew anything about genes and DNA and chromosomes. He didn't know about any of that stuff. He called them factors. We call them genes now today. And he determined that, for example, in the pea plants, peas can have purple flower. How many of you have grown peas in your backyard? Anybody? Okay. There's lots of different varieties, but pea plants can have purple flowers or some have white flowers. That's controlled by the genes. But there's dominant version and a recessive version. Yeah. So the dominant gene, what that means, if we say purple is the dominant gene in flower color, it means that it's kind of like the stronger form. The other one we call the recessive form. You could think of it as kind of the weaker form. Because the dominant gene can sort of cover up the recessive one. We use letters as symbols when we're talking about genes. We always use capital letters for the dominant gene. Okay? We use lowercase letters for the recessive gene. So let's, for example, pea plants can be either tall or short. Tall is the dominant form. So when we indicate the gene for a tall pea plant, we use a capital T. Short is the recessive version. So what letter do you think we're going to use to indicate the short gene? No. We use the same letter we used for the dominant version, but we use the lowercase version. So lowercase t would be the G, the short. Okay, lowercase is 5 to 2.
So my mom had blue eyes.
We're going to get there.
Brown eyes.
Not now, but we will get there somewhere in that. All right, so we're talking about a simple trait, and there's 2 genes for it. You probably realize there's 3 possible combinations we can have. So we could have pure dominant pea plant. If we're talking about height again, what do you think? What 2 letters would it have if it's pure dominant? They're all T's, but so you got to be more specific. Yes, 2 capital T's. Pure, meaning the same, and dominant, meaning we have 2 uppercase. Or it might be pure recessive, which would have what?
Lowercase. Yeah, no, lowercase.
No, pure
Oh, 2 T.
recessive.
Lowercase t.
Yes.
It's not wrong.
The other, what's the possibility we're missing?
Uppercase T, lowercase T.
One of each. We call that hybrid.
Oh.
A big T and a little t. The order isn't important either. So we could write that. We usually always write the capital first, but it's the same thing as little t, big T, little t, same thing.
Wait, but
So let me ask you this. This pea plant, this pure dominant, would it be tall or short?
tall.
How about little t, little t?
Short.
How about big T, little t?
Medium.
No.
Tall.
Big small.
Tall is the dominant version. Therefore, it's going to be tall. Sort of covers up the recessive version. As long as the plant has one of the dominant genes, that's what's going to show through.
Like if we're talking about eye color.
We're not yet, but we will. So just hold off on that. All right, another thing. When we talk about genetics, we use two words. The phenotype of an organism or the genotype of an organism. Phenotype, think about the first two letters, pH. It's like its physical appearance. So it's how do these genes show through? What does the plant look like? It's always a word or a description. If I say the pea plant is tall, her hair is blonde, the pea is wrinkly, he has blue eyes. So these are descriptions about what the genes actually translate into. And that's different from talking about the genotype, which is, okay, which actual letters does it have? Big T, little b, whatever the letters are. So if I have two pea plants here and we're talking about their height, and I compare them, what is the phenotype of this plant? Tall. What are its possible genotypes? Yes. Could have two big T's, could be pure dominant, or it could be, what's the other word?
Hybrid.
Hybrid. How about, raise your hand please.
Short.
This pea plant. Brandon?
Sorry.
What? Yes, this is untall. What is its genotype? Raise your hand. Juliet? Yeah, two little t's, pure recessive. Habib, question?
When you're writing the phenotype, does it matter if you have like an uppercase?
No.
Is it short?
Nope. All right, so let's learn how to complete a Punnett square.
I know.
When did you learn this, Sophia?
My dad taught me.
Oh, cool. All right, so a Punnett square is this square diagram that allows us to predict what the offspring of two parents are going to be like. If we know the genotype of the parents, we can figure out what the genotype of the offspring are going to be. It's real simple. It's not complicated. What you do is you take one parent's genotype. So here I want to know if I cross a pure dominant pea plant for tallness, big T, and I cross that with a pure recessive pea plant, well, what's going to happen?
They're gonna be all small.
What I do is we take one of the parents, put their letters on the top. We put the other parent's genotype on the side. And then we combine to fill in each box. So this box is going to get a big T from the top. What's it get from the side? Little t.
So they're all
Down here,
big
big T, little t. Here? Yes. And this one? Okay. Each of these boxes represents one of four offspring. So in this case, when we cross big T with little t, what are the genotypes we get?
Hybrid.
All hybrids. 100% are going to be hybrid. These two parents could never have an offspring that have any other genotype. It's just not possible. What about the phenotype?
Tall.
What percent? 50% of them would be tall?
No.
all of them would be
Would this pea plant be tall?
Yeah.
Yes. This?
Yes.
100% tall people. And Mendel, he realized this when he looked at his data. He knew that when he took a pure tall plant, crossed with a pure short plant, always he got tall plants. He never got a short plant. All right, let's do another one. Now we have a hybrid parent crossed with a pure recessive parent. All right, so Roberts, what should be in this box?
Big T, little t.
Yes. Dan, what should be in this box down here?
Big T, little t.
Kimberly, what should be here?
Little t, little t.
Caitlin?
Nope.
Yeah. All right, now when we look at the genotypes. Sarah, what possible genotypes did we end up with in our offspring?
2 of them could be hybrids and the other would be pure recessive.
Yes, so what percentages would we have?
About 50.
Yep. 50% are hybrids, 50% are pure recessive. Chloe, how about phenotype? What possible phenotypes do we have?
Tall and short.
Tall and short, what percentages?
50.
Yes.
They have
So in this case, half of the offspring would be tall, half would be short. Finally, last one, go ahead and do it. You guys can do this, right? Simple?
Yeah, simply.
Now we're crossing 2 hybrid parents. One parent top, one on bottom. All right, Rosemary, what do we get here? Yes. What do we get here, Nat?
big T, little t.
Yes. Nate, up here?
Big T, little t.
Yep. Linda?
Little t, little t.
Yes. Okay, so what genotypes did we end up with, Habib?
We got 75% tall, 25%.
No?
No,
Genotype.
Okay. 25% TT, 50%.
They're all TT.
Oh, big T, big T.
Yes.
50% big T, little t, and 25% small t, small t.
Exactly. And Peter, how about our phenotypes?
25%, no, 75% tall, 25% small.
Yes. 3 out of these 4 would be tall plants, 1 out of 4 would be short.
I feel bad for the short one.
I know.
Of course you do.
I can relate.
Because all of their siblings are tall.
Brandon.
Can I write untall instead of
No.
short?
I'm tall.
Here's one last one. Big Y, cross with little y. Again, you end up with all hybrids, 100% yellow plants. Easy stuff?
Yeah.
All right. Want to stick around and I'll tell you your grade?
Just for.
I gotta
Yesterday's quiz? Want to know?
Yes.
I'm not giving you passes though, so if you're going to be late, stop it later. I have 20.
Wait, what?
Right, you got it better? Everything?
What if you have Y equals X? Because like sometimes they'll cross over.
How many questions are
Out of 20.
I don't know how much I'm going to be able to practice my back.
Don't start. I'll be like, you're running. You'll be okay. Yeah, you hear what you said?
What?
You hear what you said?
No, I didn't got it now.
I wonder why. Yes.
How many points are for each question?
1.
I think I got number 10. Or I got half number 2. Wait, so
Yay!
the last one's either sperm dog or.
Can't tell you.
Oh wow,
Sometimes
you can
those things-
choose to answer. What I did, Mr.
Oh my gosh, we're doing that now.
What I get.
Brandon? 14.
So what's the answer to number 10?
I can't tell you.
Is it cloaca?
Nope.
But it is cloaca, isn't it?